Welcome to this event hosted by ILIG, CILIP's international group. The talk will be recorded, so do bear that in mind when participating. For those who don't know me, my name is Leslie Pittman and I'm the current chair of ILIG. And I'm delighted today that we've managed to persuade my predecessor as chair, Jamie Finch, to talk to us today. So Jamie was chair of ILIG for 3 years, I think, yes, from 2019 to 2022. He's still a committee member and digital champion, and is also active in CILIP Wales, so has many toes in CILIP. He has the intriguing job title of International Librarian at Cardiff Met, and is going to talk today about supporting transnational education in the UK, both pre and post-pandemic. There will be time for questions at the end, but if any occur to you, do just put them in the chat. So without more ado, over to Jamie.
Thank you very much, Leslie. Okay, I'll begin by sharing my screen, and I will see if that works. Okay, I've got that on the screen. I will just get rid of that. Right, again, sorry for the audience at home. The slides from the beginning, and I'll just swap screen views. Can you all see that big sort of title page? Is that all right, Leslie?
No, not yet, Jamie, I'm afraid.
Oh, right, okay. It worked in rehearsals, so I shall try it again. That's right. Has to be screen one.
Ah, can see you now.
You can see me.
Oh, sorry, I can see your screen now.
Oh, can you? Oh, that's excellent. Well, I shall move this. You see this one with the presentation on it?
International Bright Young Things, it says.
Yeah, I'll come to that in a minute and I'll explain a bit more about that. I'll just swap the settings. Can you see that now? Is that okay?
Yes.
You can see the presentation opening title slide.
Yes.
Oh, that's great. So that's the first hurdle. Well, there are two hurdles. One is being here, and the other one is overcoming any technical difficulties with being here. So thank you, Leslie, for introducing me. My name is Jamie Finch. I haven't done a lot of talks lately to the library community, although I am closely involved with CILIP, as Leslie says. I do have an enviable job title of International Librarian, and I like to make the most of it because it sounds really good and it generates questions with people. My other job title is Academic Librarian, and I do lots of liaison work and things like that. So I've got two jobs at Cardiff Met. So today is all about being international and being bright. I'm not sure about the young, that's why I put in inverted commas with a star, because as you can see, I'm not that young anymore. I feel young, but I think it's quite a young discipline, if you like, quite a young area to look at. So it mirrors the song title. I forget whose song it was. Oh, Jesus Jones, I think, something like that, from the 1990s, my formative years. So yeah, today I'm going to look at something called transnational higher education, and that's hopefully why you signed up, and the new area of library support for it. So you might all have questions, and as I say, just put them in the chat if you've got them, and then we can hopefully deal with them at the end. Okay. Who am I? Where do I come from? I think I've already said I'm from South Wales, from Newport in Cardiff, work in Cardiff, and this is the structure of today. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit more about who I am and the TNE and talk about the general landscape of TNE in the UK and how we at Cardiff Met, where I work in lovely Llandaff, does TNE, because everyone does it slightly differently. Okay, and as Leslie said, I'm going to look at it pre and post COVID and highlight some of the main challenges of being a librarian who supports partnerships, essentially. And at the end, I'm going to talk a little bit about the way forward, the networks that exist, and some events that we're planning for the end of the summer. I don't even want to think about the end of the summer with it being such a lovely day in the UK here. Right, yes, so Jamie from Welsh Wales. I'm a keen Welsh person. I'm on CILIP Wales. I want to make the most of Wales and certainly promote Welsh libraries. So I'm currently organising their Team of the Year award, and I'll be launching that in mid-June anyway. So that's for librarians in Wales and teams. I've already said I worked in International Librarian. It's part-time, 0.5, and it was brought in 2015. 2015 being a kind of turning point when during the noughties, librarians were waking up to the whole issue of supporting transnational education. There wasn't much going on before that, to be honest. It was quite a new discipline. And I think I was one of the first to be recruited specifically to look at transnational partnerships. And my remit also is quite broad. It also looks at international students studying on Cardiff Met campus in Cardiff. But that's out of scope for today's particular talk, because that could be a talk on its own, actually. So yeah, I take ownership of any TNE issues, and I'm going to define TNE in a minute. Yeah, so I do all sorts of things. Anything TNE and library. We've got lots of global partners, which I'll show you a graph of, a map of in a minute. And I work very closely with two people, well, one person and one department. The main way in which we're structured at Cardiff Met is I have a colleague that is employed on a similar basis in IT. So that's a real benefit for me, because if there's any account issues to do with logins and things like that from students, which are most of the inquiries that hit the IT help desk, then we are hand in hand with each other. And he can also run technical reports and things like that. And we're working on some programming along those lines to get information out of the system. I work extremely closely with Global Engagement, our internal department that manages the partnerships as well. Okay, as well as technical services, our kind of collections content team as well. We're closely with those, and they manage primarily the licensing side. I'll come to that a bit more in a minute. This is a long definition, really. TNE, there are much better definitions out there, shorter ones, okay? But essentially it involves a higher education institution in the UK making some form of partnership with another country and delivering a host with a host country. Well, who's the host? It's give and take, really. We're not the host. We are offering the program almost on like a franchise basis, as in franchising a business almost. And the host country that we make a partnership with, the university there delivers that program, essentially. The common feature is, regardless of the way in which it's set up, is that a sending country HE provider like Cardiff Met offers its program in a host country. And there are so many different ways. I think there's been lots of experience probably around this table. There are international branch campuses. Universities have actually set up remote campuses of their own, and a variety of other kinds of arrangements. But I'm really just talking about a different type, which I'll come to in a minute. But essentially, there's that partnership. So rather than the students coming to the UK to pursue our programs, the TNE focus is that the programs go to the students. Okay, so it overcomes that kind of mobility issue for the students. TNE in the UK is very big and only getting bigger. It, in many ways, is a soft export of the UK and many other Western countries. And the export size is very big. It's worth a lot of money. I don't think I've got it here on this particular slide, but just to let you know, that this slide down the bottom, we've got 162 universities and 500,000 students studying on a TNE basis in the name of a university in this country, but studying in a host university in another country. And it's increasing year on year. This latest report that I could find was 2020, 2021, and we were looking at 12% increases in student numbers. And I think each year that's a cumulative growth figure, okay? The top 15 providers in the UK account for half of the students, probably more than that now. What else? Yeah, essentially we are doing the collaborative provision model where we, studying, where is it? So UK students studying to collaborative provision. I think that's where we fit. We don't do distance, flexible or distributed learning at Cardiff Met. Yeah, so that gives you an idea of the scale, essentially. It's primarily undergraduate, and outside of those top 15, a lot of the universities are small numbers comparatively to the bigger universities, tens if not hundreds. Well, we've got thousands. I'm not sure whether I list that on the next slide, so let's have a look. Okay, no, I don't list it, but there's the value of TNE. Essentially, we're predicting a growth by 2030 of 35 billion as a country. That's what the UK government wants. So it's big business, and something that librarians will become ever more involved in, whether they want to or not, if they're working in a higher education environment. And it is a win-win. It's a win for both countries. There's a very good report that I recommend you read. I've done a kind of, if you look at the first sentence there, the 2022 report, The Value of Transnational Education Partnership. British Council report. It's one of the latest things I could lay my hands on that gave statistics. The 11 in brackets after the first sentence is my crude attempt at a Vancouver referencing system. So just look at number 11 at the bibliography at the end to see that report. But yeah, it ticks lots of boxes. It certainly hits the UN sustainability goals, which I'm sure we're all aware, particularly the right to a quality education, the right to decent work and economic growth. It hits those. And in that same report, I think the reference to number 11 in my bibliography, it's some very telling things, really. There's a hunger in other countries that can't be met domestically. And as I say, we go to them with our education. So it's a godsend with a small g for those that can't afford to come here. So those are two particular countries referenced. For the UK, it's a big UK priority, as I've already said, not just UK, but Welsh Government as well. And it's an institutional priority. We have a strategy that's, well, I haven't read it through yet because it's just been released a week ago. But there are reputational benefits to our country and our university. We want to globalize and internationalize a student body. We want that exchange of information and ideas. Quite apart from revenue growth, the TNE students don't bring in as much money as their home-based students, but there is an interplay between those two groups of students. Students studying transnationally might want to come to the UK to pursue a part of their degree or their master's degree, something like that. But yeah, it's big business. So how do we do TNE at Cardiff Met? I've already alluded to it a little bit. We just essentially deliver our courses in a host institution in another country. We're in the top 10, I would say. The others being the likes of Coventry, UCL, the Open University, and so forth. We've got 14 partners at the moment, mainly in Europe to some extent, but a lot of our student numbers are the Middle East and Asia, and transnational education tends to flow south and it tends to flow east from a UK-based direction, which mirrors colonialism. It mirrors a lot of those lines. In fact, a lot of sort of colonial interests of Britain retain those links. Our top partners are mainly Sri Lanka, something called ICBT, College of Business and Technology, and Gulf College Oman is in second place. They were quite evenly matched until recently, but Sri Lanka, we are the top provider across the entire globe in Sri Lanka at the moment. So that's our largest partner. But we have others spread throughout Europe. I'll show you the map on the next slide. And the courses are delivered in the host partner by flying faculty. So teachers and partnership managers go out to those countries, catching frequent flights, and well, yeah, it's basically the way it works. We've got about 14,000 TNE students at the moment. Now, most of those are from the business school. So there's 8,000 of those TNE are actually business school students. So it gives you an idea that TNE did originate from schools of business. So it's quite popular with business librarians in the UK, of which you might be some in the audience today. We've got less home students now. We've got 13,000 more or less home students. So it gives you an idea of that kind of balance between the two types of Cardiff Met student, essentially. And the last bit's just the strategic sort of high-level viewpoint as a commitment as far as the strategy goes. It's all about quality and looking after well-being and extending our reach and civic engagement and reputation and that sort of thing. This is the map that is in the business school as you walk in. Not entirely up to date, but I wasn't even sure how to change it because I didn't make it. What you see here, the red bit is the most important bit. Okay, so anything that's red are our transnational education partners. So you can see here we've got a presence in Greece, in Morocco, Bulgaria. We have Gulf College, that I've already said, Ethiopia, Egypt. I don't think we're doing South Africa anymore. We've reduced our partners in Singapore, I think to just 2 now, perhaps. So yeah, it gives you an idea. And we have a Chinese partner, Renmin University. So that's the kind of overview. Those are the 14, probably slightly more, but there are less now. But those are the 14 that dominate the thinking with our TNE provision. The light blue, some call it magenta. Cyan, isn't it? Cyan. The light blue are our general partners. So these are partners that we might do staff and student exchange schemes. Erasmus is winding up, but that's the kind of arrangement we have with those. We might do research with them, those kinds of activities, so that they're universities in Spain, Italy, and other places. And the navy blue, the dark blue on the screen, are our overseas offices. So there's only 4 of them: China, India, Vietnam, Nigeria, and they mirror what the Welsh Government, British Council, the UK government want universities to link with, essentially. They do marketing, recruitment, that sort of thing. There's no teaching provision in those offices. They just essentially recruit. I think that's it as an overview. You can see on the screen that there's no America. And yeah, because the university system in America is amazing, off the scale. It doesn't need development really, but a lot of the countries that you can see do need that extra support that transnational education provides. So America's been deleted. Well, it's been made very light grey on the left-hand side. So yeah, just a little bit of background, if anyone's interested. How Cardiff Met does TNE Part 2. Partnerships come and go, they are partnerships, like all partnerships. They take about 2 years to form, and there's a long process of due diligence. You know, that is there a fit between the host institution's values and our values? Is there enough market size potential to run a course in that particular country? And then, of course, there's things like professional association or ministerial approval, and a lot of the insights provided by British Council. So yeah, it's a bit of a long due diligence process. Cardiff Met doesn't actively seek partners at the moment. We are one of the biggest, so we get approached by reputation, so we don't have that much work to go out and do that, I'm assured. There's our focus, and the idea is students progress from TNE to come to the UK, as I've already said, for final year, or from undergrad to postgrad study, and that's progression. We don't call that recruitment, really. That's just a nicer way of putting it. The TNE students that study in Cardiff Met's name, they become Cardiff Met alumni, and then they get a 25% course fee discount when they pursue any further courses. In fact, Cardiff Met even offers scholarships in the 2 main providers as well to the local population of those countries. So yeah, that's how we do it. Now, I started my journey in 2015, and it was a brand new job in a brand new field, a brand new sector. We didn't really know what we were doing, but we had to do something. The university was making strategic alliances, and they were mentioning the library. So we've got to do something about that. So this is where I come in. So I thought, well, the best place to start was to map the stakeholders, and we used particular mapping techniques, and you can see reference number 5 in the bibliography to see how we did that. Did a bit of comms planning. The trouble with comms planning is the document you make can often fade from practice and custom. So that's essentially what happened in terms of comms. But the stakeholder maps were really useful, actually, in finding out who the most important people were internally and externally, and so forth. The provision of support from the library is essentially electronic. So we rely on e-journals, e-databases, e-books, we call MetSearch, our library search engine, our LMS discovery tool. And the universities at the other end, if it's print, then the universities at the other end, the partner universities, have got their own libraries and librarians in Sri Lanka and Oman and other places as well. Okay, so that's essentially the split between print and electronic. We do all the electronic. And then I started producing content to try and promote the electronic, things like PDF posters, anything I could think of. I would feed into the people that manage the partnerships in Cardiff Met, hoping they would pass the word on. I then thought, oh, well, make a Facebook site for our international students. And that's when I wrote to ILIG asking for some support. And it was almost like being press ganged in the 19th century. And I walked in, you ask them something, and then they say, come and join the committee. So that's what I did. And I did their newsletter for a few years whilst I was in the early stages of my international librarian role. So yeah, there were things like editing handbook entries that other departments have produced about the library, that sort of thing. In Cardiff Met, we hold an annual partner conference, and getting an invite to those was quite important. Those are internal, as in Cardiff Met only events. They're not national events. They're really good. And essentially all the partners come to us. They fly over and they have the conference at our venue. And they're very good in getting to meet the movers and shakers, the lead people in the TNE providers. Also, we do a fair bit of work with the student union. There are student champions in the TNE providers. They come over to the UK as well, and we then train up those student reps, and hopefully they go back and tell other students about our resources. They work quite well, I think, actually. Remote training pre-pandemic was awkward. Actually, there was really no Microsoft Teams, no Zoom. It tends to be Skype or something called GoToMeeting. So that was the early form of video. It sounds like we're talking about 20 years ago, doesn't it? This is like 6 years ago. So yeah, it was awkward, really. There wasn't the number of webcams and the number of pieces of software where you could interact. And Skype is banned, or at least it was in Oman. We couldn't use Skype anyway. I think I'm not sure about Teams. We haven't tried that yet. So, but the common denominator was GoToMeeting, and often we get invited by the hosts to those kinds of meetings. And they were remote training to the academics, essentially. They weren't geared towards the students themselves. Technical, yeah, we have library web chat, and we got a lot of inquiries from students in host institutions. But as I say, most of the technical issues are enrollment details and passwords and usernames. That's the sort of that's the love of it, really. It sounds a bit depressing, really. That's kind of a communication issue and getting those out. They're very fundamental, but they are almost like locational inquiries in many ways for librarians. And then things were progressing really nicely towards March 2020. Things are going okay, he says. We had challenges, in terms of being invited internally to meetings, particularly high-level meetings. We wouldn't be involved in early discussions of new partnerships. We'd find out quite late on down the line after the deals were done, so there was a danger of marginalisation of the library from certain things. But I was just about to go to a business school in India, which is booked for March in the Blue Mountains, I think sort of east of Delhi, which is a beautiful place according to Google. Lovely campus, but that opportunity just completely faded away. So yeah, we were doing all right, and then everything kind of stopped, essentially. We all went on to survival mode, personally and professionally, and yeah, that's kind of where the pandemic was. Now, pre-pandemic, I did manage to get to Sri Lanka, and it was lovely. That's a picture of the ICBT campus. You can see the logo near the top of the building. It looks quite basic from outside, but it's actually a really nice building internally, and they are very strong partners of ours. There's a tuk-tuk in the foreground and in the background, which only the bravest dare use. I think we're not allowed to use them for insurance purposes, and we have to actually have taxis. But yes, we went there, and that's me teaching a group of students, I think they're MBAs, about finding and evaluating quality literature. So it's lovely, you go out and we get invited to we don't even know what's going to happen when we go out in many ways. We have a basic itinerary, and then they tell us what they want us to do. They can get us making videos for them. They can get us doing big sessions at any time of the day. A lot of students study on the weekends or in the evenings, and that's fine as well. We're there to serve, essentially, and to educate and promote library resources. And that's us, my previous IT colleague, Chris Evans, and me, sitting with the Sri Lankan business school staff, because we were doing training for them as well, in the hope that students do what the teachers tell them to do, which isn't always the way, but is probably only one of the ways that we have as a way in to the student mind. This is the library in ICBT. There's a place people walk in, dump their holdalls, and then there's a basic collection. It's small. I don't imagine there were that many books compared to our UK-sized collections. And on the final day, we got a nice trip to see the elephant sanctuary as a way of saying thank you. It was blisteringly hot, but no, less hot than last summer in the UK, I should add. But it was nice. And then we went out to Colombo at night, and I made this very nice postcard all by myself. But it was a great experience, actually. So it's, as librarians, and I preach into the converted here, I realise. But as librarians, we really do need to look up beyond the UK and all of its flaws and some of its benefits, and really get a global view of the profession. And this is what I'm here for, essentially. This is one of my main professional interests. So I'm not sure how to explain this, but we do have a new library website. I'm not sure it fits at this particular point, but we do have a new library website, and we have created, you can see down the bottom, sections for partner colleges and students, and partner colleges and staff that are teaching on the programme, because there is a big difference between what students and staff can access. Let's see if that's illuminated on the next slide. So yeah, you don't need to read this slide. I just want to show you what a particular screenshot looks like for our newly redesigned website. About 2 months ago, maybe a month ago, we launched this. This is a student at partner colleges website, and it's essentially saying that we have parity of provision. So if you're a student at a host institution or at UK campus, we provide identical resources. Okay, that was the mantra. There's a little bit of advice given on how to access some of the electronic stuff. There is two main issues from a student point of view, TNE student point of view. One is that students think they can access library resources in perpetuity. They think it's not just for their course. They think it's for the rest of their life. I've dealt with 1 or 2 inquiries this week that can get a bit heated, actually, and I've had to explain the whys and wherefores of licensing, and then give a roadmap to what professionals do, what employees do, keep up to date with their subject after they've graduated. And also, we do get a lot of requests for document delivery, which we don't do. We don't supply documents outside the UK. So those are the two of the main principal things I had to put on that page. Now, we also did a page for staff at partner colleges. Okay, now this is the trouble, really. So the staff at partner colleges teach on Cardiff Met courses, but because they're not directly employed by Cardiff Met, they won't have access to the same resources that staff teaching on the UK campus will have. They'll be able, so they think they've got nothing, essentially, and they don't get the same view as that of the students. They don't get the same resources. Now, this is not entirely true, despite all the rumours. Essentially, non-UK global partner teaching staff get access to about half of the databases, okay, which isn't too bad, really, considering the way that publishers are going in terms of monetizing their licenses. Well, I'll come to that a little bit more in a bit. So they can access half, and they are decent databases as well. I think Emerald, the business databases there, Taylor and Francis, Scopus, ProQuest, eBooks, there is still a lot of content that they can access. And of course, I'm really happy to deliver training for them. I think that's going to be one of my on my to-do list going forward. So this is just, we have managed to make, I think on the previous screen there, if you see halfway down the middle, there's a link that non-UK global partner staff can click, and it brings them through to this page, which is a discrete list of the 60 of 127 or 126 databases that we currently license. So it's not bad, really, that there is stuff there. The top of the list there is a very good series of talks called HS Talks, Henry Stewart Talks on biomed and business. And they're like TED Talks for business, essentially. They're subscribed resource, but they're excellent. So getting that message across is also half the battle. So issues, challenges. I'm not sure how we're doing for time. I have no clock in here, okay? Are we doing okay, Leslie, so far?
It is 20 to 5.
Is it really? Well, thank you so much for staying around and being awake. So I won't talk for more than 10 more minutes, and then we'll have 10 minutes of questions at the end. Hopefully. But I can see in the chat there's only 2 things in the bubble. So I'm quite happy about that, actually. It's a bit like an interview where you hope they don't ask you any questions. No, that kind of thing. No, but I'm open to questions. Okay, so issue number 1 is licensing and e-provision, of which I've already covered a little bit on the previous slides. The subscriptions are on a standard institutional basis. The publishers want to know about our HESA numbers, FT equivalent data. There are GIST bans, and GIST is becoming ever more great in this area. There's a whole GIST licensing service if you were unsure whether your licenses remain compliant. And we are just about to do the GIST TNE audit, which I think is appropriate for our size of institution. Although Greg Ince at GIST, who looks after making sure these licenses are legal, he will talk you through whether that's entirely necessary or overkill for your needs. And students access our databases using the login that we give them. Essentially, we give them an ST number, ST 2000, and a password, and then they can access it. Now, the way we proceeded to date, May 2023, is that Cardiff Met Library does not license learning resources to directly support TNE. Luckily, the provision is one of 100% parity. I'll come to that a little bit more. At the moment, without us making any additional contributions in our budget, ring-fenced for TNE. We think, well, this just must be luck. Perhaps it is. Yeah, so we just extend existing access that we pay for UK staff to TNE. I can hear you, if you are heavily involved in partnership librarianship, I can see how this would immediately raise questions, but luckily no one's put anything in the chat. So this access can obviously not go on long term. Okay, the publishers are changing their approach. As my friend Ian Collins and Irene Baranco here say that the partnership access is volatile, and every new renewal can mean loss or cost, essentially, which is something that we need to bear in mind. And some publishers, I think LexisNexis on the law side, are now using course cohort numbers for their pricing instead. So this is now our first experience of an exception to that universal provision and no extra cost. We are having to price up some of our law degrees in Sri Lanka by student. So there might be a cost involved in that. We're still working that out. Well, actually, we have withdrawn access from LexisNexis with the permission and some heavy liaison with the teaching teams on the law courses here and there. So yeah, that's the way it's going. And we've done a previous presentation. Well, not we, the Royal We. If you look on the YouTube site, there's a link to the ebook SOS, Global Library Scandal, which is a humanitarian crisis in many ways. But that's not what today's about. We have issues of engagement. Pre-pandemic, you ask ourselves, are we data driven? And we want to get information about what students are doing in transnational partners that are Cardiff Met students, but it's so limited, essentially. All we've got is when someone last used their network login, essentially. It's called a last login report, which will give us a very basic indicator, but that was apparently terrible to produce. My colleague in IT is now writing some scripts to automate franchise data that they get. And hopefully we can look to setting up some graphical data that's more regular, less time intensive to produce, and I can set up a shared Teams channel between library, IT, and our global engagement team to share that kind of data. Not that it really matters in some ways. You ask yourself, why do you collate this data? Well, we know that, you know, engagement can vary widely. So let's just start from that presumption, essentially, that there's a need and try and find out the need, rather than know to the nearest percentage point, you know, what students are using. It's very hard to know. And the rest of the slide gives an indication to easy proxy. And we're looking into shibboleth authentication systems. We've done a little bit of Primo analytics visualization work. But yeah, it's very basic. Sign-ins by country, then guest and login. So it's not ideal, really. We don't quite know. Communication is probably the biggest thing that you need to work on as working in TNE. TNE is a people business. I mean, everything's a people business, but TNE is a really people business. Even some of the partnerships are formed, you know, by ad hoc visits from one lecturer to a university they might admire. So it is very, very people driven. That's why I started with doing a stakeholder analysis. And I deliver key messages to the partners, as I already said, through the partnership managers and what we call linked tutors, those flying faculty. Our quality enhancement directorate look after new course franchise approval documents. And that's often the first way I find out that a new course is coming. And yes, I have to take some action. My aim, and we'll come to that a little bit more in a bit, is to link up with Librarian and host partners. That's only partial at the moment. And it is a two-way process and you're learning from each other. It is a relationship rather than a partnership. The trouble is, though, the stakeholders are constantly shifting, internal and external. And there's a whole communication chain that there's a chance for breakdowns in that, which happened famously at Christmas break. The situation in Sri Lanka was bad for various different reasons, and exam dates were put forward into the future, but the student dates on our system were in the past, so students couldn't get access, and we had to sort that out as quickly as possible. But yeah, that gives you an idea about how things can break down. Because we're running out of time, I'm not going to spend too much on this, but we are good at quality so far. I think that might set us up for a fall in the future, or for closer examination as an institution. But we are known for, you know, we were quality assessed and we were given commendations for that. TNE partners like ICBT in Sri Lanka are private operators, and the things that they do for their students often exceed the public-private offer that we have in this country in terms of well-being. And some of the software is better than ours. Their alumni support is better than ours, so they get the benefits of those things as well. So during the pandemic, we did have some good things. I've shown you the library website already. We're developing something called Study Smart. The royal we, again, my colleagues, academic skills colleagues, are packaging up bits of learning, blended learning, videos, guides, fact sheets. I think I've got a brief screenshot in a bit. And we've been developing for home students a scaffolded information literacy program, which I'm happy to share. That's not, we have had a little bit of interaction from TNE on that, but it was designed for home student use at the moment. And there's been massive growth in student numbers. The downside for me was the staff churn. There was a complete ban on flying. And as I say, we all went into survival mode. Although because of the drive to e-provision during the pandemic, Oman, I think Gulf College in Oman managed to lobby to get broadband infrastructure improved within Oman. So it's better now. It used to be very Muscat centered, their central city, but now it's better. And ICBT adapted their curriculum and assessment methods with our support, with that kind of relationship. And I've already mentioned publisher business models and how they might get in the way of what we do. That's what Study Smart looks like briefly. You can see the types of things it covers: student academic skills, and within those, then videos and so forth. Now, rebooting it, so everyone's looking towards 2030, essentially. I don't know why, maybe that's the next big date, but all universities have 2030 plans. Some of them are partially realised, but we are, I'm kind of getting back into it, which is one of the reasons for doing this talk today, actually. It's a win-win, again, for you guys and for me, because I got to read all of the literature that's there and hopefully bring it to you in a package form. Our strategy is yet to be published, and someone said, well, it's business as usual, but it's business as unusual. And I was thinking, well, that's true, actually. We've got the ongoing challenges that were always there: non-engagement, building our multicultural understanding, monitoring those licenses, and keeping an eye on courses starting and ending. You know, this is all the kind of work we do in our day-to-day. But I think our sort of deans of faculty, they really want regular dialogue and proactive dialogue, touch point, you know, two-way dialogue about everything that matters to them and everything that matters to us. So I'll work that out. But my thrust will probably be skills support training through Microsoft Teams, but to make use of those new methods. And maybe some more visits if I'm lucky enough. You've already seen how nice they can be. Yeah, they're good. Don't worry about the first paragraph. It does involve just what I've said already. I want to build those librarianship partnerships. So if they're on WhatsApp, I'd love to have their WhatsApp details. I do have one librarian in Oman on WhatsApp, and that's invaluable, really, just to get a word on the ground. How are things? What's it looking like from your viewpoint? And yeah, I want to know what best practice looks like. It was going to be a big reveal, but it's a little reveal now. Okay, I'm nearly finished, by the way. We're all aware that just mail is the main way in which we communicate as librarians in various ways. Now, the main way in which we did communicate was via something called Lisp Pearl, and that's Tom and Alex have taken that on as site owners. It does focus on licensing issues for partners, but there were other questions being asked outside that. So essentially, we, the Royal We, mainly Ian from UE, did Lisp partnerships, set it up. We weren't, I don't think Ian was particularly happy with the subdivision between those two things. So now we talked to Tom and Alex, and Lisp Pearl will merge with Lisp partnerships and be called Lisp partnerships, because these are all kinds of issues, licensing included. And at the moment, there's a very tentative date for our morning event on the 30th of August called Librarians Supporting Partnerships Network. Okay, so it's just a morning thing, and we're going to do a bit of talking there as well. So watch this space, email me if you need more information about that. I'm done. That's my @FinchMeister1 or email J Finch. And then there's a big bibliography at the end, which I won't go through because we're out of time. So that's essentially it. I'm going to stop sharing and back in the room now. Thank you for listening.
Brilliant, Jamie. Thank you so much. And I hope you'll share the slides, because it looks as though there's lots of information.
I will.
Tucked away there.
Bibliography.
We'll circulate them afterwards.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was excellent and comprehensive, and brought back lots of memories for me. I don't know about other people. But we won't go into that now. Memories, good and bad. There are a couple of several interesting questions in the chat, so I will race through them. And the first one is a big one from Charlie Worthington. It's a really interesting point about how the direction of TNE can mirror colonialism. I wonder how content is being adapted to reflect the communities where education is being delivered or not. So you talked about parity of provision, but is there any adaptation?
Well, there's a couple of questions going on there, isn't there? You're right, it is colonial. I've already said that. It goes south and east, following those familiar lines. As I was saying, it's a people business, which goes over, intergenerationally. Now, I mentioned that I read the literature for the last however many years. I'm just trying to bring myself up to date. But there isn't really any library-related literature, okay, on TNE. It is, at best, there's just things that, Ian did a fantastic article that I've got in my bibliography in 2020, but there really hasn't been anything since. So if you're going to do a PhD, or if you're going to write an article, then I think this is something to do it on. So I found nothing on colonialism and libraries, but obviously there is colonialism and TNE, and there's a lot there, but I haven't gone into that yet. Okay. It's something that I felt coming, as I say, as a newbie in 2015, something I felt very guilty about. But from Cardiff Met's point of view, I'm assured that it's not a colonial process. It is a genuine quality two-way interaction. So I can't comment on the general literature because that was out of my scope. Although I'm interested, that is on my to-do list.
But I think there's something, Charlie, I don't know if you want to add anything, there's something here about whether the content is actually adapted at all for the local audiences.
It is, yeah. Obviously, we're talking about content that the library doesn't really have that much sway over. It's teaching, it's the course, it's the MBA courses, it's the law courses, and I'm led to believe that they are culturally adapted. I'm not sure about whether I don't know the pedagogy that goes into it, whether they stick to universal curriculum design standards, but I'm assured that it's tailored locally to be more meaningful culturally to those to the countries in which we operate.
Okay, and then from Nicola Beck in Manchester, presumably all of some technical questions really. Presumably all of the 14,000 TNE students at Cardiff Met are registered at your institution. I'm asking from an online resource access point of view. Do you know of any issues relicensing for resource access, even for registered TNE students at Cardiff Met?
There's two things to say here. Number one, I know we're running out of time. Number one is if you have a question like that, email me. Our technical services team, who are brilliant, actually, can answer those questions in more detail. The answer is I'm not aware of any problems at the moment. Okay, we're doing all right. As I've said, they're all Cardiff Met registered students, classified in different ways. The franchise staff have what we call, so they have ST numbers essentially, which means that that's our regular UK student number. The Cardiff Met, the franchise staff teaching on our courses have FR numbers. We've designated them, so they're a separate subset of data. But yeah, they're pretty much, and I don't know much about things like the aggregate offshore record and things like that. But if you need more information, I can hook you up with people that do know the answer, and I can get you an answer or at least a viewpoint if you want.
Thank you. And then from Charlie Worthington, budget-wise, who covers this? Lexis tells me it's usually covered by the faculty or university out with library budgets. Does the library pay or does the institution pay?
Library pays.
Okay. Does the library get extra money for paying?
No. We don't. And that's, as I say, that is the final frontier. That is what we're moving into, where there's going to be a tipping point sooner or later. With Lexis, we have withdrawn it from the LLM courses because they were asking for student-based money rather than institutional access. So yeah, that's, and in fact, luckily they didn't need it as much as some of the other things, but yeah.
Okay, and Becky Cole says that we, the library, cover the AAU costs for Lexis, so you're obviously not alone with that. Those were the questions from the chat, and by a miracle of timing, it is 16:59. So we were aiming to finish at 5 o'clock precisely. So we will end there, and I just want to thank Jamie very much again for such an excellent and comprehensive talk, and
bless you. It's
our
all
appreciation in the usual way.
Yeah, you get in contact and join the network if you want to do more best practice stuff.
Excellent. That sounds like a very good idea. And various thanks coming into you from the chat as well.
Brilliant.
So that's everything for today. So do look out on our social media channels and our mailing lists for news of future events. And if you've missed any of today or you want to share it with colleagues, it'll be up on our YouTube channel in a few days. So thank you very much, everybody, for attending, and thanks, Jamie, again.
Thank you then. Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.